Okay, so this is my last video for the day, I promise, and then I'm going to go spend some time with my family. I've been just following the stories, trying to piece things together. Like, how did things happen? How are Ukrainians being so successful in Kursk? And I think I have some of the answers for you, but we need to start here. And we're going to look at this. This is where Kursk is. This is where the Belgorod incursion was from the Russians over into the Ukrainian side, and then this is, as you know, the normal line. Okay, so I was trying to figure out, like, how did they not know? But they did know. Russian Telegram channel, citing sources, states that Russian Chief of the General Staff, Gerasimov, knew about the preparation of the incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Now, I told you about that in an earlier video, but I didn't tell you this. According to this source, before the attack, the border in the Kursk region was held by the 2nd Guards Spetsnaz Brigade. So if you're talking about like special forces in the United States or Green Berets or SEALs or Rangers, Spetsnaz is up in like that. And anytime you see the name Guards, that's an elite designation, whether it's honorary or not. So it was held by these guys, Special Forces Brigade from Pskov, Akhmat forces, which aren't really that tough, it turns out, and mobilized conscripts and even former prisoners. So these are who's left, because shortly before the offensive of the AFU, most of the trained soldiers were transferred to the Belgorod direction to help the North group advancing in the Kharkiv direction. Okay, so that makes some sense of it. So most of the soldiers that were tough around here were transferred over here. Now, they're being pinned down here by Ukrainians. They're engaged by the Ukrainians, so they can't like leave and go to Kursk very easily. They're going to lose their ground here, and they don't want to lose that. Okay, so that answered one question. The State Duma urged not to expect a quick victory over the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kursk region. Yeah, they're messed up. They don't know exactly what their messaging is. They're waiting for Putin to decide. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They're not really evacuating people properly. It's a real pickle for the Russians. Okay, Jason J. Smart. But of course, Russian soldiers are making the right decision to surrender. That is right. If you're a conscript or a former prisoner, something along those lines, yeah. But I'm in Kyiv, and no one ever imagined thousands of Russians surrendering without putting up a fight. Now, I don't know if it's thousands or just how many. I haven't seen actual figures of those that have surrendered. But yeah, it turns out Russian soldiers will not fight, and it's truly incredible. It really, really is incredible. This is beyond belief that this would have happened like this. But it's not the elite soldiers that used to be there. So that makes some of the sense of it. Okay, so now the FSB was put in charge. The FSB, like the equivalent of like CIA in the United States, it's that kind of thing, or MI6 in Britain. So now the FSB takes the task of repelling a foreign invasion because the army is not good enough for this, which is true. But what can the FSB do? And it's a good question, because the FSB just doesn't have the manpower that the army has. Meanwhile, spokeswoman Maria Zakharova on the Ukrainian Armed Forces' latest T attack in Russian regions. Now, I've had some of you in the comments say, well, why do you say T attack? My last video, my very last video, was just demonetized. And so thank you to those of you who are buying me a coffee or membership or Patreon or whatever. I don't know how you do war news reporting, which I'm trying to do faithfully, without potentially stepping on these. So I'm trying to minimize that. Latest T attacks in Russian regions. Okay, first of all, it is not a T attack. These guys, okay, so T's do not go and try to hold ground. They try to do something disruptive and sow fear and cause you to panic. But they don't try to hold ground and stay there, which is what armies do. It's not apparent that Ukraine's missile and UAV attacks on Russian regions are clearly, or it is apparent rather, that Ukraine's missile and UAV attacks on Russian regions are clearly of a T nature. But it's not, because they're going after military objects, which is exactly what militaries are supposed to do, which is not what Ts naturally do. So there's that. And then here's the Russia's Human Rights Commissioner. I can't imagine a more challenging job than being the Human Rights Commissioner in Russia. Russia's Human Rights Commissioner has issued an appeal to the UN High Commissioner urging condemnation of what she calls tea from Ukraine in Kursk Oblast. But okay, let's say that it is. How is that any different than what Russia has been doing to Ukraine for 2.5 years? It's either one or the other. Which is it? What, like, how do you split that? How is it not tea when you're coming into Ukraine and doing what you're doing, including stealing toilets and all the violence that's involved there? And how is it tea when the Ukrainians do it to you? The appeal does not contain info on who started the current war, which was Russia, of course. Okay. Ordinary Russians, now this goes back to 2022 when this first happened and the Russian tanks and armored combat vehicles were rolling across the border. Ordinary Russians were cheering on this army invading Ukraine from the territory of Kursk region back in 2022. And so now they're not so happy. And I showed you a picture of some of the refugees. And I feel bad for refugees at just the humanity of it. But where were they? Where were their voices for the last 2.5 years? Perhaps the U.S. thinks it's less escalatory to have Ukrainian soldiers marching up to these Russian launchers and destroying them by hand. Where were these long-range restrictions, or were these long-range restrictions part of the hostage deal? Now, he's only speculating here with that, but Zelensky was saying, look, we recorded all the places from which ballistic missiles are launched. It would be fair if the launching sites of such missiles were destroyed, if they could use American weapons in order to do that. But at least so far, the American government has not allowed the Ukrainians to be able to target these places, even though they're doing this wreaking this havoc in Ukraine. It's absolutely mind-numbing. And so warfare is evolving. They're doing things differently. So here, drones even are involving. This is a new drone that Andrew Perpetua just put on here. And then the way that you deal with drones is also evolving. So I saw this and I thought, oh, this answers another question here. Why? Like, I was wondering, like, I thought, where are the drones? Why is Ukraine having this much success without drones just devastating the Ukrainians? Here's why. By concentrating enough jamming resources in the Kursk sector, Ukraine neutralized Russia's drones, allowing their armor to cross open territory without being destroyed. So freaking clever. It's amazing to watch. Okay, this is a little nerdy, but stay with me. In 1978, Sultans gave a speech at Harvard that is more relevant than ever before. Gary Kasparov reposted this, and I thought it was interesting. 10 insights, and I'm only going to read a few. Sultans wrote that it's a fashionable trend of thought in the West censor more than the USSR ever did. We have been self-censoring, like self-censoring videos or censoring news or censoring even the way that we think about things, deterring ourselves from giving Ukraine what they need. And then these I thought were really interesting because people demand breaking news and instant updates. The media has replaced knowledge with guesswork, rumors, and suppositions. Now, we try very hard not to do that here on this channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'm trying to show you, lay out facts and show you, try to connect dots for you and make sure I cite my sources along the way. Then 9 and 10 are really, really interesting, and they apply directly to what's going on in Ukraine. Too much comfort and ease is detrimental, as strength only develops by encountering adversity. And if that's the indication, then the Ukrainians are the freaking Incredible Hulk. And then finally, Solzhenitsyn said, biology knows that habitual extreme safety and well-being are not advantageous for a living organism. And so you get fat, dumb, and happy if everything's just going right. This is why these guys, they're tough, because they actually had to be. This guy, tank man, steel nerves, iron will, firm determination, tough. This guy here, unbreakable, unstoppable, undefeated. The Ukrainians, for all the damage that they have taken, they are stronger than they have been in years, and it's really remarkable to watch. Okay. Last little bit, I saw this meme. I thought, there is something to this. It's not sanctions. It's a special operation to return your economy to its historical 1989 borders. Okay, that's all I have, my friends. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.